my style. I liked what we did last week. We started off, all this learning that we do is to relate to real life. Otherwise, it's of little value. So last week we began by talking about each of us who wanted to said where we're at in our lives, where we're at right now, what's going on right now. And I'd like to do that again. So anybody like to start to, because whatever you said last week is no longer the case because it's a new day. So everything's changed. Even if I saw you a couple hours ago, that's not to say you're going to be the same as you were then. So I like to share to know where we're at. Who wants to start?
What are we talking
About where you are yourself
in your life.
Oh,
how you're feeling, what's going on, any issues that are overwhelming you, any sharing you want to make.
I can start. Betty's surgery is tomorrow. And I thought I would really be nervous. But, or Betty would be nervous also. But neither one. We found so many people that are willing to throw their arms around you and hug you and say everything's going to be all right. And we'll do our share of praying for you. And I find I'm a lot calmer today than I was yesterday. And, so the hugs and the friendliness really makes a difference. And you may not know it, but somebody that's hurting inside, just give them a smile, a laugh, something can really change their day and make it different.
yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I was saying that to somebody earlier today about words. Words have so much power. If you say it, if you curse somebody, it wounds you like a knife. But if you say positive things, it can make all the difference. And it can turn around how you feel. Just like people saying that to you turned around your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
You have a great wife. You do.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
I was thinking, aren't you the first person I ever visited in the hospital when I first came here? Wasn't it?
I do.
This was 3 years
My
ago.
knee, yeah.
I forget why you were in there, but Anybody else?
Do you have puppy dogs on your house?
I do.
I have turtles.
Mine are tame. There was the cutest little dachshund on TV the other day, in Tampa, I'm on that channel, Channel 13. And they showed these animals they wanted to be adopted. That was sweet.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
You should have gotten it.
I know, but then I came to my senses.
Well, you can always babysit my dogs.
Yeah, I'm out of the babysitting business.
Red doesn't want me babysitting.
Well, I keep
Neither do I.
I keep on.
No one wants to.
Or keep them with that.
I'll give them a what?
That.
They need one desperately. They both got fleas.
Oh.
Well,
Terrible.
Saturday night when I fell,
That's the dog calling now.
the dogs, I had the door open, so the
Give
dog.
me that lady's telephone number.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, on top
Right.
Anybody
They
else?
came back.
I'll
Where
share.
are we?
I'll share. I feel like I desperately am searching for balance in my life. I have a very taxing job that keeps me on the road all the time, an average of 100 miles a day, and then I have to write incredibly detailed reports on each place I visit. And I find myself never caught up. You have 5 days to turn in the report, but I'm going somewhere different every day. So it doesn't take long for them to snowball. And even I took a week off and I worked that entire week basically to try and catch up. I got there to the point of 2 surveys. Now I've got 6 again on my desktop. So I'm constantly in catch-up mode. the things here at the church have been very distracting and very painful. So it's just a matter, and then my house, when I'm upset in here, I display it by just kicking my shoes off, taking my jacket off and flinging it on the couch. So I've got a big mess in my house. I don't have any sanctuary where I can go and just pray. I mean, I go to my bed and I find my bed, but there's clothing that's been washed and in baskets that hasn't been put up. I just don't know where to start. It's like I'm constantly in a circle and I don't feel like I'm making any progress. And it's frustrating. And so I look for outlets where I can, like Father Paul was saying and what Jerry was saying, this is an incredible outlet for me. When I was going through traumatic things before, when I was in a very difficult marriage, I found church to be my outlet. It was where I got my support from God and then all the people that surrounded me and lifted me up. And I feel that now, but at the same time, here we're having issues. So it's so painful, and you want to do the right things and say the right things, and I don't know. I'm probably my own worst enemy because I'm very hard on myself, but that's my story right now. And tomorrow is a new day. So I keep telling myself that.
Is
I
there any
went-
chance that your job should be a two-man job instead of one?
No, well, I do get some help.
Because that's a lot of driving every day. That's tough.
Well, I mean, if it's on your schedule, you have to go. Sometimes I get help, but if I'm the team lead, which I often am because I train new people, so then that even puts more, because you have to review all their work
Yeah.
and make sure that it's worthy of being turned in. So I told them, please don't make me the team lead all the time. Give me a break. So when I'm not team lead, I'm going, yes, I only have to do my little portion, turn it into somebody else, and they can worry about it from there. I've had meetings with my boss, but it's just,
To me, it sounds like it's designed to be overwhelming. I mean, if you go to a different facility every single day, it's like when I worked in mental health clinics, you had to do case notes and you were always behind because you're overwhelmed with the amount of work.
yeah.
I mean, maybe this is just a concrete suggestion, but what about having a tape recorder that as you're driving to the next place, you can talk into it and record your reviews
Thoughts and information. That's a great idea.
rather than having to type it out talking on the way home from the facility
Yeah, and then when you get home, you could just type
Right.
it up.
or get somebody else to.
That's a cool idea.
There are
50
computer,
cents.
They do,
there are computer programs
You're
where you
dragging.
can take
but
such a
you can
thing,
talk into it.
plug it right into your computer and it'll transcribe it. And all you have to do is change the transcription as you're going. That works. Again, other people in your field, like when I was EAP down south, I was in such contact with the other EAPs in New York and in Orlando and in Texas. What are you doing? Because you get called out in an emergency and you're in the middle of something else, and they all had different solutions. So whoever is doing your job, say in New York or wherever, if there's a group, like an American Association of something, get in touch with somebody like that who's got the same load as you, and just ask, well, what's the way out of this?
Yeah,
Because
well,
they've been through it sometimes, and yet the other times they've got the same problem.
I think part of it's me too, because
Well,
when I first started the job, I love the job. I love it because it's something different all the time.
okay.
But when, and this is just a state job, so there's 25 other people that do what I do. But I have been a state worker for over 33 and a half years.
Right.
I'm getting older. I feel it. You know, I used to stay up until, 11 o'clock at night and type reports. I can't do that anymore. I refuse to do that. I can be paid overtime, but when I've driven that long, to Claremont, that's a 70-mile trip one way, back again. And I could sit down and do it, I guess, right then and there, but I don't have the energy. So I don't. And then, 3 or 4 days later, I'm like, oh, it's coming due, I better get onto it, And I think my friend told me, Dottie, you're just ready to retire. That's a sign. Because it's a hard time I have a hard time getting up some mornings. I just want to stay there. And I never used to be like that. I used to be,
Well, the other thing I said, because I've gone to where you work, the nature of your work is so demanding and emotionally, it's just fraught with emotion.
It can be,
About, and people would surely see you as the enemy because you're there to inspect and find what's wrong and call people on the carpet. And it's just a super stressful situation.
Yeah, I mean, we had to close down a facility for abuse and, all kinds of things. It was a 1-day survey turned into an 8-day survey because every day we'd go, there'd be something else. And, it eventually got closed down.
I would hope to think, I'm going to answer your second question, your second point. I would hope to think church ought to be a place where people can find strength and relief from, because you step out of real life and you come into this spiritual dimension. And, if that's not the case, then there's something that needs to be tended to. And I'll just respond to your second thing. You were saying there's a lot of tension going on here at this church, and that you pick that up.
Yeah, it troubles me,
Yeah.
that's all. I just
Well,
want the very best.
Let me just answer that. Or not answer, but let me give you my read. This book is about the first conversion has to be to Christ. And I feel that that's what is beginning to happen here. That we are beginning to turn to Christ first, last, and always. And in that process, some people are going to fall by the wayside. And like you all are here tonight. You made an effort to come. You wanted to share thoughts. You wanted to think about your religion. You want to leave here feeling different than you came, or more enriched. And those are the people that will make church. And I think some of this other stuff is so extraneous that it's time for us to just put it aside and move forward. Because I think the potential is here, enormous potential. And it reminds me of some of my other churches. When I was Gladys Brothers Church in Brooklyn, I knew him long before I knew Gladys, years and years and years ago. He was better looking. No, I didn't say that. But the church I went to had a leader who was very controlling, demanding, off-putting to everybody. And we had great tension with this person. And eventually that person left. And I was at that church for 10 years. And after year 1, when that person left, it seemed to open the door for all kinds of other people to come, because they were like blocked away because of the meanness that was going on. So, and I kind of feel that's happening here. It's hurtful that people are grumbling or upset or whatever, but by and large, they don't want to change. They don't want to do things. They don't want to do ministry. We're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. So I'm not losing heart.
No. And my silly phone calls to you.
Pardon?
I said, when I make those
Oh, my
silly
God.
phone calls to him,
Well, this,
it's to try and make him laugh too, because I feel like laughter has got to be one of the best therapies there is. And I'm a very silly person. You don't know me that well, but I'm a very,
you mean you're even more silly than the experience?
yes, I
Oh,
think so. You,
But I have to say, we all have gifts, and you have a great gift for humor and impersonation. I mean, it's
I
extraordinary,
just, that's how I talk.
but it's
always.
wonderful. It's wonderful, and it is important. I think we have had a rough spot here, but I think we're going to come out of it now.
Mhm.
We're halfway through Lent, and we got Easter's on the horizon, and I think that's going to happen here too. Because we're going to talk about that next week. Today is still on Christ. Next time is the church. And we're going to talk about what that means to be converted to church. But yes, ma'am.
I just think that as a group, Dottie, you have all the support right here that you need.
Mhm.
Dottie reminds probably most of us who are now retired of what it was like. I quit teaching when they started putting stuff on computers because I couldn't handle it. I would go home and almost cry at night because I had this big stack of stuff that I had put on my computer and I didn't know how to do it. But I think we've all probably been there at some time or other in our lifetime. But you've got strength in this group.
Oh, I know.
And you're not alone, because I think we've all been there at some time or other, and maybe some of us are still there.
I'm not, I really think, I talked to my doctor the other day, and I said, I just need a routine. I don't have a routine. Every day is different, but every day could be getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time. I mean, I'm all over the place.
And
I'll come stay with you and
if
get
you
you one
contain a
of
day, if you're going to X facility and you have to evaluate them, your evaluation of them ends that day. So that in the car on the way home, you're doing a report, and then you're done with that. The
Yeah,
next
you
day you
can
go
move
on to the
on.
next report. I always thought of Governor Nelson Rockefeller, who was the governor of New York, from the Rockefeller family. He had an uncanny, maybe I've said this before, he had an uncanny capacity. He'd see thousands of people a day, but he had an uncanny capacity that the second he's with you, totally focuses on you, and now it's done, boom, I go to the next and I'm done. So it's, and maybe that's a way to help contain all the stress of the demand on you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That idea that Ray has dictating when you're on your way up there, that to me would be what I'd want to do. And get
Well, I
that
know
out.
I do have, it's not on my tablet, but I know other people in my agency have it, where instead of typing, you can
You
talk
talk and-
into
yes,
it,
yes.
and it types for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I
Sometimes it
could,
types funny words, but that's true.
yeah,
You'd have to proof it.
I
It's
could
a
probably
Yeah.
put if I could get that feature turned on my tablet.
That's
called
one.
Dragon.
Well, we can't put apps
There's
on
several,
our
there's some
work
included
equipment.
in your machine.
Yeah, it has
Just
to
have to
be
look
on
for it.
my machine
And you'd
because
have to
it's
stop
state
playing
equipment.
country western music and do that.
Right.
Did you say stop or start?
Stop.
Yeah,
And hire somebody to clean your house.
there you go.
Absolutely. No, those are good
Have
solutions.
somebody come in once a week.
Those are
Once a
absolute
week, do your
solutions.
laundry for you.
Every other week,
Absolutely.
every other week I have somebody comes in and cleans. You know what I do before he shows up?
Clean.
I straighten up.
That's what I'd be doing. I'd be so ashamed. I'd be so ashamed.
Now, look at that. Look at the group has offered you answers that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Let me just finish with my comment about you saying the stress at the church presently. We talk about conversion. I feel like I have had a conversion just in the last few days in terms of my sense of what's going on here or the impact of the stress and all that stuff.
You seem calmer.
Yes,
I
he
am.
does. Yes.
You seem more
I do.
relaxed.
It's drugs. I mean,
I know he does.
Share.
yeah. But I've had wonderful conversations with the diocese.
Oh, good.
Good.
Incredibly supportive.
Oh,
They've
good.
got our number, and they know about some of our grumbles, and they're not being swayed by them. But they were so supportive. And then the one question that was asked of me, which turned around my whole thinking. And the question was, do you feel like your ministry at Holy Faith has ended? And I thought about it and I said, no. And that's changed everything. So I'm prepared to jump back into the fray. We're going to pump up the agency. We're going to look at the building thing. We're going to look at a lot of stuff. We're going to come alive like we were, the trajectory we were on. And this is the beginning.
Mhm.
This gang right here is the beginning. And, you know, that's what I say about words. They're so important. And you can't be so affected by people who have negative words. Whenever you know deeper in yourself that that's not so. So we're going to be fine. And you're going to be fine here.
It's a new day.
You have a lot to offer here, even if you were going to sing a desk hand. I mean, you know.
I didn't even try. I knew I would. But what was I gonna say?
Now I'm getting a solo coming up. This young lady here is going to ask her husband if he would either sing a solo or read a lesson, because a week from Sunday is his 80th birthday.
Oh, wouldn't that be
What a voice he
wonderful?
has.
Oh, he
I'm
does. He
telling
has
you.
a
He's amazing.
beautiful. Oh, wow.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
You can always tell everybody else in the church, everybody else in church, be quiet.
Yes, and let's listen.
His voice will carry the whole
Yes.
church.
But
I
I
can hear it in the
noticed,
back.
I noticed the,
Don't tell me.
again, it was very quiet Sunday again during the,
Well, again, I have to say, pristine Alan. He's brand new. He's kind of shy. He doesn't know a thing about the Episcopal Church, but he's willing to learn, and we have to be kind.
supportive
Yes,
and
we have to
kind.
build him
give
up.
him time.
Well,
Come on.
he
Because
asked
some
that,
people have already been nasty and negative, and that's just not right.
no, but he asked to have a keyboard in the back so we can practice before we go out front.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
So I have one and she has one, we just haven't gotten,
really?
we didn't get it here yet.
Well, look at that. That's magnificent.
And I told him
That's
we
a
would.
solution to a problem. That's lovely. Can I sing a solo too?
Sure. You have a good voice, sure.
Yeah.
And do it once a year.
Nice and low.
Right?
Nice and
Nice and
low. Nice
low.
and low.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna-
You do, you have that.
All right, let's go on. Who else
back
wants to
to-
speak? Young lady there.
I have felt that God had forgotten me for this last year, for what we've gone through, and I think Saturday night was the tops. I called Father Paul a couple of weeks ago. I said, does God ever quit giving you things to get through? And he gave me a good answer. And today, and then Sunday and Monday, I was hurting pretty bad, and still it's there. I get a call from a man from the Methodist Church that I used to be on a committee with. We have the same birthday, so we got to talking. He offered me a free type of wheelchair that I've been looking for. That has been on the line is $1,600 on up.
Wow,
And all I have to do is make a donation to the church.
wow.
And I just felt like I was on top of the world. And then it wasn't 15 minutes later that Ken called, and he's actually been moved finally up to Lake Butler. So I guess God does do things right.
Oh,
In his time.
In his time.
yeah,
I guess I was too much in a hurry.
Well,
that's
It's
hard.
true for all of us. I can say the same. I can identify with you with that for sure.
we want problems
Especially
solved.
when you feel like me, you know, I'm not 24 anymore. And I keep reminding people, I started at this church, I was 16 years older than the guy who started before me. And I'm just mindful of the time parameters, and so I want to hurry up and do stuff.
We're talking like Donnie with pressure at work. When I was in the cash office at Walmart, we counted that safe 3 different times a day. and we had over $100,000 in the safe. So one morning I went in, I'd been off for 2 days. I went in and I had 2 trainees in there. So I let them count the safe. They came up $10,000 short.
Oh.
I said, count again. And I quickly get on the PA and call security. And it wasn't on me because I hadn't worked for 2 days. But come to find out, the woman that was in charge knew she was short. And she covered it. And you just don't do that at Walmart. You count paper clips. And when she did the deposit, you separate cash, checks, and did the total. And she had put the total in for cash and then put the checks on top of it. And there was her 10. I said, finally, the manager called Stan, find that error, which I knew where it was. It wasn't my place to tell him. And I said, it's in the deposit. The bank's already got the money. But you're on camera 24 hours a day in the cash office. But it never bothered me. I love that. I'd go do it today, I think.
Well, it's a precise job.
Oh, it is.
Money has to balance. There's no ifs, there's no maybes.
I won't use coupons because I used to hate to count and have to go in the refrigerator and have the computer.
Or anybody else want to share? Miss Terry?
This church has kept me alive. All I do is that.
And Terry is 49 up in Kansas today.
Oh.
I talked to my
Glad
daughter.
here.
I didn't get that.
It's 49 degrees in
Her
Kansas.
family's out there by where my
Oh,
grandson
really?
at Fort Riley. Yeah.
But you know, somebody else just told me the same thing.
You know,
This church keeps them alive.
my husband was a firefighter and he fished and he hunted and he never had to learn to retire because he incorporated his work life and everything. He helped people. It just took it all in his stride. Well, when I retired, I had to learn to retire and do something because I was always busy. I mean, I couldn't interfere with him. I mean, yeah, I go fishing once in a while, but all his buddies wanted to go with me. Anyway, we moved up here. He wasn't an Episcopalian. And I said, Eddie, come on to church with me. I'm established at this church. And I said, they're not going to know you're not an Episcopalian. We're up and down. You just follow the road.
It's okay if he isn't.
Well, I know, but he liked Father Tom, and he did take him fishing. He and Buzz did, so they got to know each other. But he mowed this place. He and Buzz would mow on Fridays and keep everything cleaned up. He thought he joined and everything, and we were only up there 4.5 years for retirement. We built our retirement house and everything. He died of leukemia. In 4 days he was dead after diagnosis.
Oh, dear.
It was horrible. Yeah, it wasn't anything I knew was going to happen. And a year and a half later, my son shot himself.
Mm.
And church just kept me going.
Oh, gosh.
We continue to do it.
I'll go clean up your house if you need someone else.
I'd be too ashamed.
She's got so much energy.
She had
to clean before you came.
Yeah, right. You know what else I like, Terry? I like the fact that you claim your own life and you claim what's happened to you and the horrors of it. And
It was
that's,
horrible.
there's something healing about that.
Everybody was here.
You're so safe.
Yeah.
I will regret Gladdy, because I had Mark come into Bible study when he had been in the hospital and he was doing well. And he came to Bible study, but I needed to bring him to you to talk to. There you go. I think you could help save me because his daddy was gone. I still think about that.
Well,
Anyway,
Things went the way they
they
went.
went the way they went. I had to try to accept it. But
Yes,
I didn't mean to get into that.
it's all right.
Oh, bless
But you shouldn't beat yourself up. We all do that.
Those feelings are right there under the edge. That's why I act stupid and silly and have a good time here.
That's what keeps you sane.
Yeah.
Well,
Well-
just,
I'm sorry.
just for closing type thing, as we left last week, you said pick somebody to pray for. And I really was surprised. I did that, what I was told to do. When I do my day by day, I pray for them. I chose 2 people, and it got me, I had to come back this week. I just need to come back, because there's people here, I come back to hear what happened to them.
It's a friendly zone here.
Yeah. So, the study is good. It's, at least for me, it's
Wonderful.
But I am upset with those turning with the people that are my dear friends. It really is upsetting to me.
Of course, because you all have known people for a lifetime.
And we still
But-
love them.
We have to keep in mind, this is church. This is not really a friendship circle. You know,
It's not
I
a
mean, I've
country
always said
club.
that people in the church they're not your friends. You know, they're fellow pilgrims with you in a process. So it's a different kind of category, even though you've known them for a long time. I also want to say, you know, some people, we're very small here. I mean, I was shocked. The treasurer gave me a list of how many pledging members we have. You know, in the Episcopal Church, in terms of membership, part of that is pledging, using the envelopes, giving so much money, and that sustains the institution. Right now, we have 29 members. Now, the Methodist Church has 300. How does 29 is not a sustainable number in the long term? And if people are unhappy, some people are not giving. But I feel we'll find a way. This is Christianity, you know. We'll find a way. I mean, if somebody said a couple
God's in
people are going to
control.
leave
Yeah.
and we're going to have $800 less a month, well, somebody else right away said, okay, we're going to have a fundraiser. I'll do this. I'll do that. We'll find a way to do what God wants this place to do. And so that doesn't bother me. You know, if we're doing the right thing, the money will come.
Mhm.
Plus, we don't have a mortgage on this church.
That's right.
These other churches have mortgages.
That's correct.
I think we're in a lot better position
That's right.
than some of these big guys.
That's right. And I know, myself included, if push comes to shove, we'll take salary cuts. I couldn't speak for you, but I mean, you know.
Mine is large.
Yeah, right.
No bonus for you.
No bonus. No
In the
bonus.
new, is it Living magazine, just came out today, they were saying the average since COVID is 35 attendees at an Episcopal, out of 2,000 Episcopal churches. And they're saying they get 20 online. We're doing like 60
I
online.
see that. In
And
last week's group here, we had 40 people watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some, you know, there's
We got
good
more than
happening.
29, you say 29 members, that is.
No, 29 pledging
Pledging.
members.
Oh,
People
pledges.
use the offering envelope.
right. But they're saying that even with the computers, that it's more than, like if a family's watching,
Yes.
they don't get notified,
That's
but
right.
only one computer.
Right.
So we're doing amazing things
That
here,
is true.
and we
people
don't
are
see it.
watching worship here.
Yeah.
On Sunday. A lot of people are watching worship. You know, if the average is 40 something, and I see one of them was 60 something. So, well, I also want to say, again, not to lose heart, because again, without knowing it, we have folks doing great things. The other morning, I get a phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning from this young girl here telling me that one of our parishioners is in the hospital. And because of that, because she called me, I was able to go to the hospital. Was there right after Andy, they were here last week. Right after he had surgery. I didn't know that they were friendly. She went over to her house to be with Ann to help her out. I mean, now that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
Look how their life changed from when they're sitting here telling us about their stories.
That's
And
right.
now look where they are.
I
He's
know.
in the hospital, broke his hip.
I know.
I mean,
Yeah,
God, everything can
but-
change in an
But
instant.
because of that, I helped Dottie because they were supposed to do coffee hour together.
There you go.
And I called because in my mess, I couldn't find my
We better go to
my
her house
parish
later.
directory. And so I called Liz. I said, Liz, I need to call Ann. I had no idea what had happened. And she's the one who filled me in. So then when I made the call to Ann, I was able to, express my concern for Andy and everything. But I wouldn't have known that if I'd found my directory. But Liz gave me the number. And
I also want to say, I have to commend us. This new person over here has had a really rough patch, lives alone, is in a wheelchair, and yet people have done, from my point of view, I'm not speaking for you, have wonderful reaching out and concern and connection. And I reckon that's part of what's sustaining you.
It is, that phone call you made Sunday with everybody talking on the phone.
I took the phone out of his
When we were at the
hand.
restaurant.
That's right, and I
Passed the phone
I
around.
just hung up from you and Donna called. So it's a terrific group of people.
Form of harassment.
But again, it shows you the power of words.
Awesome.
Sometimes at night when I'm there with just the dogs, I mean, they're a lot of company. I wouldn't be without them.
Thank God for
I
that.
just, I need a human to talk to. And invariably, phone will ring.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, sometimes that happens. It's like
Well, we are human here, I'll tell you that.
I know.
everyone.
All right, anybody else? Anybody else want to share?
I'll say one thing about the Bible study. Typical church down here gets 3 members. We're sustaining at 8. And you think 8 out of 30? That's a remarkable figure. And yet, they're all, like today, they stayed for over an hour. We were just, it was just the Spirit coming out. And it was like, wow, we want to lock the doors in the church and let them all
Was young John
experience this.
Did Fred show
there? Has he
up?
been
Yes.
coming?
Good, good.
No, John,
No.
I'm going to put a notice up over there. I ran off some
Because
notices.
that's something else I like here.
Yeah,
But
before
we have
numbers,
been
yeah.
very welcoming of all kinds of folk. You know, young John, who has psychiatric issues, but there's something about this place, he likes coming here.
Yeah.
I mean, a month or so, at first I was taken aback, he came to the door and he said, my mother just died.
Yeah, that was
And I was like, this was the first like human connection. And we talked about that for the next couple of weeks. But there's
Oh.
value
The
here.
gentleman with the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
He hasn't been here for a while.
No. But, so don't lose heart about what you're doing. Be yourself, you're a gifted person.
Don't beat yourself.
And, yeah, it's all going to sort out if you begin to set some parameters and limits as to what they expect too much of you.
Mhm.
5 times a week for 5 facilities is too much.
Well, 4 usually. They've been giving me my write-up day on Fridays. Hallelujah.
That's good.
It's Lent.
I hope you're not doing any write-ups about us, though.
No. I am writing an article though I'm gonna send it in tonight to the newspaper on Bishop Augustine.
Anybody else? So now we're talking about conversion to Christ. Anybody, you remember I gave you some thoughts for last week to think about somebody that's had a conversion. I mean, I could, he mentions one in here of John Newman, you know? It's fascinating. Here's a guy, yeah, you know, he had a ship and he transported slaves from Africa. He made a lot of money off of it. He did it for 7 years. And then he suddenly had this total conversion. He wrote a book about the slave trade. It's really powerful. Let me see here. It's just this is the final thing he said. This is written in like 17. It was published in 1788. and the guy lived another 20 years after that. He finishes, though unwilling to give offense to a single person in such a cause, I ought not to be afraid of offending many by declaring the truth. If indeed there can be many whom even intercept can prevail upon, they don't use it in English like we do, to contradict the common sense of mankind by pleading for a commerce of ingenuous, cruel, offensive, destructive as the African slave trade. So, and then the guy gives that up, and what's he do? He becomes an Anglican priest. And then he was an Anglican priest, and then he wrote hymns. He wrote, "How sweet the name of Jesus sounds, glorious things of thee are spoken," two goodies, and Amazing Grace.
Oh, yes.
So astounding, and it's a beautiful little life story here about his preaching. And the older he got, eventually he couldn't read anymore, but from memory he would preach, and he preached 6 sermons a week. Just really lovely, beautiful things about how he turned his whole perspective on life around, and how religion changed everything for him. So did anybody else think of anybody, or anyone you know, or famous person? Nobody. I gave you a name last week. Remember? I said George Wallace, but I don't know how legitimate that change up was. He claims that he had a. No, the governor of Alabama who shot. Right, but he had been.
What proof do you have of that?
Yeah, that's what I say. I don't know.
He taught one of my classes in college.
Really?
George Wallace, the governor. He taught what was the class? Bigotry 101?
No, I think it was a history class.
Really? How could that was before he was governor?
No, I think it was.
Was
I don't remember whether it was before.
Was he in a wheelchair?
No, he
No,
wasn't.
okay, then probably before.
No, he had been hurt skiing. But he was not in a wheelchair.
Where was this?
City College.
Is that right? Wow. City College was right up over where St. Philip's Church was, where I was for my happiest years of my priesthood. City College was right up there, and we were down here. So nobody can think of like conversions, I was interested last week when we talked about either the conversion like St. Paul, which happens instantly and you're turned upside down, as opposed to gradual as your life goes on. And most of you seem to feel like you are more in the gradual.
Can you have I don't know if this would be defined as a conversion, but I can recall a telephone conversation I had with my sister back when I was in a very difficult marriage with 2 small children, and she wanted me to go to church. And she kept asking me and telling me, Dottie, you need to go to church and find, strength in going to church and being with people, of similar beliefs and all this. And I remember telling her, Pam, I have so much going on. Same old thing, same old story, different day. And I said, Sunday is just my day to relax. I can't commit to church. Well, that stuck in my craw. And I made a decision to go to church one day. Took the kids, and they had never really gone to church at that point. And I remember my little one, she was probably 2.5, and she slept through the service in the pew. And And I started going, and then I became involved in the news. I got some, I felt like I got a new identity and a purpose. And I finally got the strength to, and as crazy as this might sound, I sang in the choir, and the organist said, "Dottie, would you sing a solo?" Now, I'd never sung a solo from the time when I was 14 was the first time. My father was, a musician, a vocal trained. He asked me to sing a solo when I was 14, and I was scared to death. And he was not happy with my performance. And he had recorded it and played it back and said, "Oh dear, we couldn't even hear you." So asking me to sing a solo after 30 something years, I didn't know if I could do it. So I did it. And I really credit that, overcoming that fear, because my dad was, of course, in the congregation that day, and he was overwhelmed with joy when he heard me sing. And I felt like if I can overcome this fear, because I was fearful to leave my husband, I didn't want to give up on it. But after that, I felt like that helped give me the strength to get away and to break away from it. But I don't know if that's a conversion, but it was for me. It changed my life in the sense that I finally came, and I credit God with that, because
I have a great quote today from Cicero. Boy, are we intellectual here or what? Cicero said, quote, yeah, the greater the difficulty, the greater the joy in overcoming. And I like that. And I also, an article I read from the New York Times the other day intrigued me, called "Why You Can't Predict the Future of Religion." There's all these statistics about numbers and who's attending and all that, and the next generation, they're not coming to church and blah, blah, blah. But they quoted a guy from 1822 who was quoting Thomas Jefferson, who predicted that Christianity in the United States would no longer exist after the death of the adult generation. And that nobody would be a Christian, everybody would be a Unitarian. Well, of course, that's not what happened. And there was called the Great Awakening in the 1800s. And I feel that can happen here in this little place. We can have a Great Awakening. We started doing wonderful things here. I mean, you saw my little newsletter. Look at that. This lady who comes and gets food here, she couldn't put on her stockings. And because Connie had one at home and gave it to her, look at that. I mean, that's extraordinary, and it's happening here from one of our own. And Connie, again, I think it was Connie, a few weeks ago, some friend of hers in Michigan said, I'm getting older, I'm retiring, I have nothing to do, I don't know what to do with myself. She said, join a church. And it's really true. I'm convinced that there's a whole congregation waiting and needing us that's out there, like the 183 people who come for food. Why can't we invite them to come worship?
The lady that I gave the medical thing to, I actually seen it on Facebook, answered her message back and forth. She now is a client of the food pantry also, but the first thing out of her mouth after she said thank you was, "Is there anything I can do at the church?" Because she's in a wheelie walker, and we'll find something for you to do, sure. So she plans on coming. Just because she was so happy to have someone give her the thing that she needed to put on her own socks, because her neighbors were doing it for her. So yeah, she loved it. I mean, she sent me a picture. It's like that was Sunday morning. And she was just so happy she put out her own socks.
Wow.
All right, 2 comments. The first one is, who turned off the air conditioning? Terry.
I'll go look.
Somebody turned it off.
I think it's on.
Can't breathe.
It's on.
I think I
It's
just
on
felt it, right?
75.
Oh,
Everybody's
it's hot
getting
air.
Put it down.
sleepy. The last thing I would ask,
Okay, go ahead.
I get blamed for everything.
I was gonna say, the last thing I would ask, okay, now next week, we're gonna go to the church, the next 20 pages in the book. So if the place to start for everybody is to be converted to Christ, and by the way, I think that can happen over and over and over again. I mean, even I feel it, it's a new thing.
Something that,
There's a new process needed for me to convert to Christ in terms of what is expected of me right now. So it doesn't end.
no,
But what could we do? What can we each do to assist in a deeper conversion to Jesus Christ? We don't usually talk this way because we're Episcopalians. But does anybody have thoughts about what we could each do to enhance our relationship to Jesus? No? Okay.
Pray
That's
more.
it then.
pray more.
Huh?
Pay attention.
What do you mean?
She's never really said this before. You'll think I'm crazy, but I was living in.
Louder.
Sorry, I was living on a little island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, not really. Bermuda, 700 miles off the Carolinas, and I was a young mother with 2 little boys, and we were living on one end of the island, and we had a hurricane coming. Well, I grew up in Canada. We didn't ever have hurricanes in Canada. And I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know what to expect. And I just laid there in bed praying, please God, don't let this hurricane hit this little island. And a half an hour before it was due to get to us, it took a turn and this was completely.
Wow.
Well, I absolutely believe that was God. And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't think anybody else would believe that. But that was one of the things I think sometimes you need to pay attention to, that things happen.
Absolutely.
And whether anybody believed it or not, I believe it.
Absolutely.
Well, again, my little brain always goes to the same association. What was that television show, The Waltons?
Uh-huh.
And the way it ended, every session ended, all the kids are in bed in the
I'll
dark.
say good night, John Boy, good night, so-and-so.
Good night, John Boy. And the little girl says to John Boy, let me think what it was. John Boy, do flowers talk?
Yeah.
And John Boy said, well, I think if we listened, we could hear all kinds of miracles. And it's the same thing. About, I saw a red bird in my backyard again this morning, and I knew that there was an angel there, and that there was a sign of things were going to be okay. So I think we need to look around ourselves too. We have such good people, and in spite of all those who are not feeling that now, there's miracles going on.
Something to do, I have to say, is pick up the New Testament, look at John chapter 3 and 4, and you see 2 interesting people. You saw one, Nicodemus, and you're going to see another one coming up. And there's so much us, both of them. It is us. How do we approach Jesus? In the dark? Or seeing him at the well? When people walk by? I mean, where do we find Jesus? And what do we say to him? It's like, if you had a question and you were the head rabbi, what would you ask him? If you were the one lone woman who couldn't come to the well with other people, what would you say to him? He doesn't even have a bucket. What's he doing at the well? So, read those 2 chapters.
I'm sorry, John.
3 and 4.
To back that up, the life of John Newton, this is his own autobiography, but again, the last paragraph in the book. I have many books that I cannot sit down to read. They are indeed good and sound, but like a halfpence, there goes a great quantity to a little amount. There are silver books and there are very few golden books, but I have one book worth more than all, called the Bible. So that's the source book.
Well, I was a good little boy. I sang in the junior choir. I got confirmed in the Reformed Church. And Billy Graham was having a big rally in New York City. And that was the night I think I really took Jesus Christ as my personal savior. And guess what book they gave everybody to read? The Gospel according to John. And I think every one of us should read that.
So that's a conversion experience right there. You know, I kind of wish we did that, you know, to have an altar call, if you will. We don't really demonstrably do that in the Episcopal Church, you know.
Yeah.
I
I found that the study groups are the best way. You need to study with other people, make up your mind. You don't have to believe it, what they're saying. They could be wrong, but that's not the point. The point is that you're focusing on Jesus and heaven and your life.
He's gonna
And
speak.
Bible study, I was so afraid they went to Tuesdays because of my job. I haven't been able to go to that particular, well, another one too. So, no Bible study, but this is the kind of thing that I do. So I'm happy for this.
It actually came up as a suggestion before Mass, do a little, or after, or part of the coffee hour, meet in the corner, and if we had questions, wow. I'm open to anything. I'm trying to put it online. I'm trying to just see if there are people that would be interested.
I had, you know how we were supposed to think outside the box? I had a thought the other day of making like a corner in here with a little coffee bar and, you know, make it intimate where you could do that kind of thing, even on a Sunday afternoon.
Well, I
People
like
could
these
come-
chairs, these
Yeah,
couches
these
here.
couches, and you can maybe get another chair and a little table and make it, you know, people love coffee bars, so why not have a little coffee corner or something?
I think we
Bible
found this
corner.
once a
Bible
week,
corner.
this Tuesday thing has been really important
And
to
I
people.
think this is important, is to keep this.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not every Tuesday, but
Right.
at least twice a month
Right.
that we meet like this.
you know, for the movie or for just to talk.
Just,
We don't do that on Sunday. Hello, how are you? That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really share life.
I just have to, you know, you asked a while ago if we knew of anyone. Well, you all know my life. I went through seminary and I got the job at the University of Colorado. My husband was in math and physics in the same college, wasn't doing well. And he had been in the Navy and he came out and when we got married, he had never even been baptized. And this bothered me a lot because how was I going to cope with my career if he wasn't able to be part of it? Well, as it happened, shortly before we were married, his mother died and he went back to live with his dad. And I followed him. We got married and followed him back to Ohio. He and his two sisters and his dad were all baptized at the same time. It was because we had gotten very close to the minister of the church where I had been brought up and so forth, the denomination I was in. And it was one of those things that he decided to go into ministry. Well, what's that, 50 years ago? And he ended up being a pastoral minister. He went to seminary at Yale and then pastoral ministry. And then when he decided that was too many politics in that area, he went into pastoral counseling in the hospital. This is a man who did not grow up in church. And when we were just before we were married, he was baptized.
That's something.
That's conversion.
I should say.
Yeah.
It probably had something to do with you because you were.
It bothered me a lot. And it's not
Would
one
you
of those things you
express
push
it?
on someone.
No,
It's not
it's
one of those
not.
things that you can force someone to
Did
do.
you
It has to
express
come from
it?
inside. And I think it was our relationship with the minister, a young couple that we got to know very well when our firstborn was just little. And here, he had a whole career. He had a lifetime. And he still does. He still goes to the Christian church down in wherever it is, Melbourne, wherever. But here's a man, you know, he came out of the Navy. He had no idea what anything was. But that was a real burden. When we decided to get married, I thought, how's this going to work?
Were you married in a church?
Yes, my home church in Colorado Springs. We had 2 ministers marrying us and 9 seminary students in the congregation, and it lasted 25 years. But what I'm saying is, I had prayed and prayed, you know, what am I going to do? How can I carry on my career if he's not going to be part of it? And it was very moving that his dad and his 2 sisters were all baptized at the
New
same time.
Testament, the whole family was baptized.
I grew up in Barbados. All right. My grandmother went to a church called Pilgrim Holiness.
Of course.
I've never seen one here.
Oh, I've seen 1 or 2.
And they had something called the altar call. And I've been in church 11 o'clock at night, waiting for one more person to come up to the altar. I don't know about the altar call. I remember singing, I can't remember the name of the piece, but we would sing this hymn, the last verse of it, sometimes 10 times, waiting for this one last person to come up and give his or her soul.
Just as I am.
Just as I am.
Just as I am.
That was usually
That's Phil.
Just as I am. Without one.
That was the altar call. That was in my church too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
We didn't sing
incredible.
it that many
That's what-
times.
But that's the Billy Graham,
wait
I
till
think
11.
that's what they used to
Yeah,
sing.
yes, true.
They sang it over and over again. So
As they came down from the
Yeah.
stadium.
Thank you for sharing that.
Nice.
I think we need to kind of wind up. Anybody, you want to go around? If anybody wants to add anything, let's just go around. If you don't want to speak, that's fine too.
Made my Crucio. I would say when I made my Crucio, I felt that it was a definite.
Well, and I want us to get into Cursillo. It's
There's
a
one
wonderful
coming up,
renewal
they said.
experience for a weekend that everyone can go to once in their life. And this diocese has one coming up for women, one for men, one for couples. We definitely need to do that because it's a great revival experience too. You have? You want to say anything else, Mr. Treasurer?
I have to tell you all my protector. Out in my backyard, I have a little area that is my memorial garden. And I have this cross. I got it at like Gunter's or that place on 488 where they have all these cement things. It's a beautiful cross that stands out there. And I have some angels. Anyway, I put a solar light on it. And so when it gets dark, here's this cross all lit up in my backyard. And I dare anybody to come try to break into my place and see this cross. I feel like it's my protector.
Yeah, that sounds
I have a
good.
cross for my front door.
Mine's in the backyard, but it's all lit up. And, you know, I think I feel safe. I can't, because there's some yahoos around. People say, oh, somebody stole this or that. I just can't believe someone's gonna come in and sneak in and try to get in Eddie's garage or something, and here's the cross there. Wouldn't that make you stop and think?
It wouldn't stop my bear, I tell you.
Bear might hang
The
on.
local bear.
I
Anyway,
take
that's
a
just
seat.
my little protection.
I love that old fashioned word, yahoo.
I don't
Heard
know.
that.
I was married to him.
Love them all.
Ms. Crane, anything?
Yeah, when I first come to the church, on one year, Jackie asked us to come to have a polish the stand and all that. I said yes. Then that Friday, we put the bowl on Saturday and polish. Then Friday, the storm come to, and one of my big tree in the front and fell, couple benches fell right onto my front of the house. So I had somebody come to try to remove them to cost about $500. Then I talked to Mary. I say, I guess I'm not coming because I had to clean up all the mess and it cost me so much and all that. Then Saturday, I come again. I come back and she asked me, Trey, why are you here? I say, my mistake. I'm sorry, God. I say, I promise I come, but I shouldn't back out. That's why I come, I say, I don't care about what I clean up and pay for, because I make a promise to God I could come. Then that day when I went home, I walked in the evening, in the morning, my neighbor talked to me. I said, yeah, I get really upset because my tree fell down, the bench fell down. I had somebody come to look at it. It cost me a lot of money. My neighbor said, don't worry, let me come and look at the tree. And both them, husband and wife, come and cut my tree for nothing.
Oh, wow. You were.
I don't know that's the answer to me because I say, I'm sorry. I tell Mary, I said, I shouldn't back out because I promised to him I will come and have the polish the candle. I shouldn't back out. So I come anyway.
And then he said, oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I'm going
Then I
to.
told my neighbor, I said, you are my guardian angel. You sent from God. Yeah, he answered to me right away. God, I'm so touched. Then I told him, I said, I can't believe that God answered me right away.
And to me, being on the altar guild is a special ministry. And there's something very sacred about doing just that, just polishing the brass or setting up or ironing the purification. There's something about that which is very holy. So and it affects you. So you're doing wonderful work. It isn't a job, it's a ministry.
Yeah.
It's a ministry to the rest
You
of
never
us.
feel.
And
Because
she
you
read
said-
tonight.
Huh?
She read. She helped read.
She
Really? All right.
It took me a long time. I don't know how to wait when I first come to the church. I have problem even start the page.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But you know what else I like about you? I mean, because you sit in the front, you're not afraid to sit in the front, and you're clearly at worship.
Yes.
You're not there to read the newspaper or listen to the radio. You're there to worship, and you're doing it, and that's a great model for the rest of us.
And I try to come to church all the time. I don't want to skip for any reason. I'm always there when
You're always here.
You
You're just
are
everything.
very.
when I promise something I do for the church, I always be early.
Can I tell them about what you read in church while you're waiting? She has her phone on, but her phone has the Bible translated so she can read the Bible.
I had a Google
That's what she's
translation.
doing
Every time I
Sunday
read the
morning.
Bible, I write down the word and I didn't know what it means and pronunciation. I put my, in the Google translation, I put the word in and they come to tell me how to pronunciation, the meaning and Chinese and everything. That's how I learned my English,
Is this in Mandarin or what?
Cantonese.
Cantonese?
Oh, wow.
That's within 5-6 years, I'll be able to now be able to
Computer
read.
is a wonderful
That's
thing.
You did a beautiful job tonight too.
Thank you.
Good for
I,
you.
well, my heart was pounding.
Oh.
When I asked her to read, she kind of looked at me like,
I try. I say,
she read twice.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
I'm from a long way.
You have it.
I thank you everything to God though. Be happy to learn a lot of things. I didn't know how to mow my lawn. I didn't know how to act. I did everything now after my husband died.
Would you come to my house?
Her lawn is precious.
It's a manicured lawn.
How about you, Millie?
Well, the only thing I have to tell is that I wrote Robert this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and he answered right away. I told him that we were using.
You should remind him. That's the author
Yes,
of
I
the
said
book
I
we're
was gonna do
reading.
that,
He
yes.
used to be a member here at this
Yeah.
church.
And he was very impressed that we were using his book. It took him 5 years to write this with Kevin. Kevin was an older gentleman, an older priest that was his mentor. And so he asked if I would keep him updated, so I will do that.
Oh,
Just
that's
know, Ray,
wonderful.
I was thinking maybe near the end, if there was a way we could do a Zoom with him, with the author on the TV, and we could talk to him.
It would be good.
Wouldn't that be
How
cool?
far away is he from here?
He's in Arizona.
Yuma,
Well,
Arizona,
that's
I
kind of
think.
far, but, we can work on that.
Yeah.
It would be a separate connection.
Well, that's wonderful, Melanie.
Do it online.
Yeah, I
If
said
you
I
do
was
it
gonna,
online,
get in touch
Get
with
me
you.
his phone number.
This is the first time anyone has told him this.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So he would.
And this is his church, he started here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Did
cool.
you tell him that the priest didn't know that we knew him?
Anybody else, or are we gonna finish? Anybody else want to add anything from this side of the room?
I'll add a little on Billy Graham, because every time I hear Dr. Graham, I go back to my day when I was working at the funeral home, still in the seminary. And I was his chauffeur for a day. And it was like his little confessional. He was just so open, and he started talking about his family problems, and his sons. And I was like, I don't know how to answer this, man. But he was just so flowing and grateful that someone would listen to him. You think about this is very Billy Graham, and I've got somebody's ear, and he's gonna, be here all day. And I felt like, wow, something to remember. Great.
Yeah.
How that happened.
Sir,
You learn something new every day, right?
Right.
While I was cramming
Yeah,
earlier the year,
that's the word. He was cramming, trying to read this before the class.
I have trouble reading it at home and then really remembering very much by the time I get here. So I get here at 3:30. I can do some nice quiet reading out there. I never thought about it, but growing up with religion and the Bible and everything, there were pictures around of like the Sea of Galilee and the men in the boats fishing, and they're small boats. You think about people fishing like we do today. And I'm reading that one chapter in there, and they talk about the fishermen as being like the dock workers of today.
Yeah.
With the foul language and all the rest of it. Like, oh my God, I never imagined that that's the way it was.
Like working at Ford Motor Company.
Only if you were in the plant. If you were where I was, no. I was in research and engineering. We were happy with our jobs. Most plant people didn't seem to be too happy with their jobs. They were miserable places to work. They were hot and noisy. Where we were, it wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I would never imagine that that's what they meant by fishermen.
Well,
Those
again,
people of that.
the people keep inspiring me, and quote speaks to what you're saying. This is in the book too. Newton later came to believe that before his conversion, he actually was a Christian in name only, and with no real sense of the personal nature of the gospel. So that's more of what we're getting into here, how personally it affects each one of us. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Age before beauty.
Go ahead.
I used to sing in a quartet with Robert.
Oh, really? Is that right? Oh, I've read about that quartet.
And Dale was one of my admirers. Then he used to come to church every Sunday. And anyhow, something else. When I first came to this church, I think it was the first week, as I was walking out of the church, there were two ladies, and one was from Georgia with her large, beautiful hat. And she looked at the other lady and said, "Who is he?" And the lady said, "Well, he's one of the new parishioners from New York." And her reply was, "Did you ever tell him that he missed the Baptist church around the corner?"
Oh, ouch.
And I told Barbara about it. We were planning not to come to this church.
Indeed.
And that week, the senior warden and what's his name? Tom
Razor.
came to our house and asked us if we would come to the church. And now I have more admiration and respect from ladies I don't even speak to sometimes to put on my robe. This young lady puts on my robe for me just about every Sunday. She makes sure I step into the right place. Nanette.
I know
is
her.
always helping me.
I saw
You're
somebody.
just
on
spoiled
Sunday.
rotten at Holy Faith.
Yes.
It's
Terry.
beginning to
Age
think
has
that it
its
is going to
privileges.
continue other places.
So you can't give up very easily. Sometimes you have to be persistent.
Well,
And,
I want to tell the story again. I've told a few tonight. We had the funeral here last Saturday. 50-something people, a lot of teachers from Inverness. And this lady said to me, "Oh, I used to belong to this church." And I said, "To this church?" She said, "Yeah, I came here for a long time." And a very zippy lady. And I said, "Well, why don't you come here anymore?" She said, "Well, I came here for a number of years and not a soul spoke to me." She said, "Well, no, that's not true. Only 2 people ever spoke to me when I was here. Even the priest didn't speak to me." And she said, "I can only remember one person's name. It was Gladdy."
Really?
Yeah. So she remembered his name, that he's the one that spoke to her.
I believe that.
Saint
Yeah.
Clair.
And you know, it's just very important that we keep in touch with anyone who comes. I thinking of Vicky Moshe. You know, she didn't come, and she was on the calling list for the vestry, but there was no phone number for her. So what I did is I took the email address, which was her husband's, and I sent the email, and I just said, we're missing you, and, you know, we'd like to have you come back, and so forth and so on. He sent me the nicest email. He did. And he said, "Thank you for reaching out to her." And what she'd been here almost every Sunday.
That's right.
It's important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. I'm going to ask Jerry Finner to close our meeting, and next week we go to the next 20 pages about the church. Mr. Finner.
Heavenly Father, we praise you, Father, and thank you again for this coming together of our church family. You can see, Father, that we care for each other, we hold each other up. Help us, Father, to give that to the whole wide world. Help them to know that you are God. You created us, so you love us and care for us. So in your precious Son's name, Jesus, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Jerry.
I want to say that reminds me of what our bishop told us last week. In his opening remarks, he talked about how it's that the whole mission is beyond ourselves, that it's how we carry it out into the world that really is the final, you know, yes. So what you just said was so true.
It's the way
Here, Millie,
everybody
don't
else
forget
sees
your
us.
sweater, honey.
That's our mission.
9:30? 9:30. I see it takes about half an hour.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
They have to drive after dark.
Yes, they have to
Bye,
go
Millie.
before it gets dark.